Right now, somewhere in your house, your phone is within arm's reach. You feel a small itch in your mind. Nothing is wrong. You are just unoccupied for a moment, and that feeling is unbearable. So you reach for the phone, you scroll, you don't even know what you're looking for, but the real answer to why you did that is far stranger than habit or addiction. It goes back almost 2 million years to a moment when boredom wasn't a nuisance. It was a survival tool, and it might be the single most underrated force in the story of human civilization. Boredom feels like nothing, an absence, a gap, but your brain doesn't experience it as nothing at all. Researchers at York University, led by psychologist John Eastwood, define boredom as the uncomfortable feeling of wanting to be engaged in a satisfying activity but being unable to do so. Notice the wording, wanting, unable. Boredom is not laziness. It's a kind of hunger, a hunger for stimulation, for meaning, for something to do with your one and only mind, and like all hungers, it exists because it once kept your ancestors alive. Picture an early human, maybe 200,000 years ago, sitting at the edge of a savanna. There's no task in front of her. No predator, no prey, no fire to tend, just empty time. What happens in her mind during that gap? This is where it gets interesting. That gap is not wasted time. It's prime real estate for the brain. Studies on what's called the default mode network, the brain system that activates when you're not focused on a specific task, show that this network lights up during idle moments and drives mind-wandering, memory consolidation, and creative problem-solving. Neuroscientist Marcus Rachel, who helped identify this network in the early 2000s, found that the brain is shockingly active when it appears to be doing nothing. It's not powering down, it's reorganizing, planning, imagining. So that early human, bored at the edge of the savanna, isn't truly idle. Her mind is running simulations. What if I tied this vine differently? What if I struck 2 stones at this angle instead of that one? What if I followed the herd a different way next season? Boredom, it turns out, was forcing her brain to generate new ideas just to escape the discomfort of having none. Here's the twist almost nobody expects. Boredom may not be a flaw in human design. It may be the engineer. Animals largely don't get bored the way you do. A lion that has eaten will rest, fully present, fully at peace with stillness. It doesn't reach for a stick to fidget with. It doesn't stare into the distance, restless, searching for something to occupy its mind, but you do. Your ancestors did. And evolutionary psychologists, including researchers like Andreas Elpidoru at the University of Louisville, argue that boredom evolved precisely because human environments became too complex, too changeable, too dependent on innovation for a simple system of hunger and fear to manage. Hunger tells you to find food, fear tells you to avoid danger, but what tells you to invent the spear? What tells you to wonder if fire could be carried, not just found? Nothing built into older survival circuits could do that job. Something new had to emerge, something that made stillness intolerable enough to spark searching, but not so intolerable that it caused panic. That something was boredom. Think about what early tool development actually required, not desperation. Desperation narrows your focus to the single most urgent threat in front of you. Innovation requires the opposite. It requires spare mental bandwidth, time without a task, a mind allowed to wander toward questions that have no immediate payoff. Could this rock be sharpened? Could this branch hold weight? Could this sound be repeated on purpose? Archaeological evidence supports this pattern more than you'd expect. The earliest stone tools, dated to around 3.3 million years ago at a site in Kenya called Lomekwi, show experimentation, not just functional flaking, but variation, different angles, different strike points. Researcher Sonia Harmond, who led the excavation, described tools that suggest trial and error beyond pure necessity. That's not the signature of a creature only solving immediate problems. That's the signature of a mind exploring possibilities during downtime, then keeping what worked. Now here's where it gets personal. You inherited that exact same restless circuitry. The discomfort you feel scrolling for something, anything, to fill a quiet 5 minutes, that's not a modern malfunction. That's a 4 million-year-old engine still running, except now it has nowhere productive to send its energy. Your ancestors' boredom pushed them outward, toward sharpened stones and new fire-carrying methods and unfamiliar trails. Your boredom gets absorbed instantly by a screen that offers the feeling of stimulation without ever demanding the work of invention. The hunger is satisfied just enough to silence it, but never enough to build anything. This matters more than it sounds. Researchers studying boredom and creativity, including a widely cited 2014 study by Sandy Mann and Rebecca Cadman at the University of Central Lancashire, found that people who were first made to feel bored through a tedious task performed significantly better afterward on creative thinking exercises than people who went straight into the task without a boring build-up. Boredom in a controlled setting made people more inventive, not less. Their minds, starved of input, started generating their own. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If boredom is the spark that built spears, fire control, language, and eventually agriculture, what happens to a species that never lets itself feel it anymore? You almost never sit in unfilled time now. Red lights, waiting rooms, the walk to your car, the 3 minutes before a meeting starts. All of it gets absorbed by a device built specifically to intercept that ancient discomfort before it can do its job. The itch arrives, the phone answers it instantly. The mental wandering that used to follow, the simulations, the planning, the inventing, never gets the chance to start. This doesn't mean boredom alone built civilization. Cooperation mattered, language mattered enormously, climate pressure mattered, but underneath nearly every leap, there's a quieter ingredient that rarely gets credit. Unstructured time that made the mind uncomfortable enough to wander, and curious enough to wonder what might fix that discomfort. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, known for her work on early human cognition and cooperative behavior, has pointed out that human childhood itself is unusually long compared to other primates, leaving extended periods where young humans aren't yet contributing to survival tasks. That extended gap, filled with observation, imitation, and yes, boredom, may have been crucial training ground for the kind of flexible thinking adult humans would later need. A long, occasionally boring childhood wasn't wasted time, it was practice for invention. So the next time that itch arrives, the one that makes you reach for your phone without even knowing why, pause for a second before you do. That feeling is not new. It is not weakness. It is the same ancient pressure that once pushed a hand to pick up a stone and strike it at a slightly different angle than the last hand did. It is the same pressure that once turned empty hours at the edge of a savanna into the earliest sparks of tool, fire, and eventually everything you call civilization. Right now, somewhere in your house, your phone is within arm's reach. The itch in your mind is the same one that built the world around you. The only question left is what you let it build next.